to speak on knowing thyself. I want to speak on knowing thyself. Those words, know thyself, they are inscribed on the temple of Apollo in Greece, over the temple. Know thyself. They're attributed to Socrates or Pythagoras, but they actually were said hundreds of years before that by Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching. He puts it just a little differently. He wrote, he who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. We talked about this yesterday. We read a writing from the Bhagavad Gita yesterday in our day of retreat, and we talked about what is the self? Who am I? The sage Ramana Maharshi, one of India's greatest sages, he always advised his spiritual aspirants to continually ask in meditation, who am I? Who am I? Now, if you just ask it with a rational mind, you might say, well, I don't know, I'm this 60-something-year-old body. I'm this mind. I'm this personality. I'm this musician. I'm all these roles I play, right? But who am I that notices I have a body? Who am I that notices I'm thinking or not thinking? Who am I that notices the breath? Eckhart Tolle says to know yourself as the being underneath the thinker, as the stillness underneath the mental noise, as the love and joy underneath the pain. That is freedom, salvation, enlightenment. So, Eckhart Tolle, he's a joyful, playful being. He reminds me kind of the Dalai Lama. He just gets such a kick out of himself and out of life. And I recently watched a video that was it was just 10 minutes of all his funny moments. It's so great. I recommend it. Then there's part 2, 10 more minutes of more funny moments with Eckhart Tolle. But in one of the funny moments, he was telling a story about this young woman who came to his retreat, his conference, and she had her first experience of really going beyond the thinking mind and really resting in something where she felt this stillness and this bliss and this greater reality and this greater sense of self and who am I? And Eckhart was talking about it being the non-conceptual self, right? So she was just flying high, and after the conference that day, she went out with friends to the conference center. There was a bar and restaurant, and she was carded, and she was asked for her identification. And when she answered, I have no conceptual identity. And the bouncer was really confused. In fact, it kind of stopped his mind for a moment. But he was a bit clueless as to what she was talking about, and so she got her license out. But she told Eckhart, during a session, the story, and he just had such a great time telling the story. But it really points to the fact that there is this conceptual identity. There's me and my story. We tell it often, me and my story. And Tolle says often it's a story about why I can't be happy now. Has anybody ever told that story? We've all heard that story. Why I can't be happy now. And so he says there's that, but then there's this being beyond the thinking mind. And it is, it's what the Apostle Paul meant when he said, find the peace of God, which passeth understanding. Find the peace of God, which passeth understanding, the understanding of the mind. So I have shared with you, I have spent a lot of time in India with my spiritual teacher, Alma, the hugging saint. And she, when I would go to the ashram in India, I would go for the purpose of spiritual practice, like we did yesterday for 6 hours straight. We're going to do that more, just so you know. People loved it, so we'll do it maybe every 3 months. But when I would go, it would be 10 hours a day of spiritual practice. And it was pretty austere, and it was intense. It was so purifying. And all that meditation, you really got to see all the ways that your mind wanted to rebel. You just got to sit and really, it's like doing a Vipassana. Anybody done a Vipassana retreat? Yeah, it's like you sit there for 10 days and you really watch your mind and see how much it wants to rebel and tell all the stories of why we need to do something else. But you learn to watch it. You learn to watch it, and you learn to continually disidentify with it. You notice the thoughts, just like you notice clouds that pass in the sky. But you're not lost in the cloud. You're the sky, and you learn how to be the sky more and more and let the clouds come and go. But I remember one day I was carrying out my usual routine. I got up at 4:30. I went and chanted the 1,000 names of the Divine Mother, which took an hour. Then I went and had chai, and then I went and did an hour of yoga and meditation on my own on the roof on the 10th story of the ashram. Then I did my seva, which was chopping vegetables and rolling chapatis in the kitchen. And then a little later, I did the singing seva, which was my favorite part. I got to sing for Amma's programs. So then we all went to shower, and it was time for the evening program, our favorite part of the day, where Amma would give a talk. And then she would lead in meditation, and then we'd sing for an hour and a half. So great to have a spiritual teacher who leads you in singing every day. So we all went to the temple. We had our showers. We had on our nice clothes for the evening. And Amma wasn't there, and she didn't come. We're all sitting there waiting for Amma to come. And she doesn't come. We're waiting. Finally, I just got up and started walking around the ashram grounds looking for her. And of all places, I found Amma in the cowshed. And Amma had been walking to come give the program and saw that the cows were in a cowshed with sticky, icky, wet manure that was about 3 inches deep, and that she felt they were suffering, that they were getting sores on their legs, and somebody wasn't doing their job, their seva. So she just walked in the stall with a bucket and a scooper, and she started just cleaning. She had a white sari on, and so we were standing there like it was an interesting combination of feelings, fascinated, a little bit aghast, and feeling like what to do, We're in our best clothes, so I just felt like, well, we have to join her. So one by one, we got in the cowshed with her, with our bucket and our scooper, and we just started helping her scoop up all that cow manure. And pretty soon, the word got out, and all these folks that, at the ashram were in the cowshed. And there were so many of us in the cowshed, and it's getting splashed everywhere, and it's all over our clothes, a lot of white and cow manure on it. And at one point, it was finally splashing on my face, and it was in my hair, and we cleaned that cowshed, and then Amma got the hose and was spraying it out and being very playful with us all. And then, as soon as we were done and it was clean, she silently walked out and sat underneath the palm trees. And we all followed her. We all sat around her. There was at this point about 100 of us. And she went into meditation. So we all went into meditation. And I had really one of the most profound meditations. I sat there. At first, I was overwhelmed by the smell. And also, I was very hot and sticky and sweaty. And so just for a few moments, I was, my senses were reeling. But then I went beyond the mind and beyond the sense perception into that place where, she's transmitting that energy, where we are resting fully in the self that is free. It is free of sense identification. It's free of thought identification. It's free from aversion. It's free from attachment. And I was in all this bliss. I had the most blissful meditation, and it went on forever. It was like an hour. And then when we came out, we chanted Om. I realized I had gotten such an amazing spiritual teaching, because I had never known I could overcome aversion. We all deal with aversion. We're aversive to smells. We're aversive to people. We're aversive to smoking, or we're aversive to this or that. We have all kinds of aversions, right? But I realized so many important lessons, and one was that love, when we feel such a deep love, we can just overcome any aversion. You know, there's a person in my life that just to go to their house and hang out with them is hard on me. The whole atmosphere is hard on me because it's very dense. And yet I overcome that aversion because of love. And that's what happened with us. We loved Alma. She loved the cows, you know. And we just, love makes you transcend and overcome any resistance and any limitation. It makes me think of Mother Teresa. You know, she was in Calcutta, and she would go out to the streets and pick up people that were dying. And if you've been to India, people that are dying, you know, they're dirty. Sometimes they have leprosy or something. They don't smell good, and there's also sometimes lice and things like that. And, you know, she just, every day, that was Christ for her. She was picking up Christ, taking Christ back to the home, cleaning Christ so that Christ could die a peaceful death, a dignified death. And so that is the teaching that I felt like I got that day. It's like, you know, we can overcome aversion, and love is really what lifts us to that freedom. And it is a freedom. It is such a freedom. You know, I've talked a lot about attachment, but liberation from aversion is a big thing. It's something I'm actually working on a lot with myself. Because, you know, the judgmental mind, it has opinions, and it doesn't like this, and it doesn't like that, and it has aversion. And so that's what conditional love is. Well, I love you if you're like this, but if you're like this, not so much. That's conditional love, isn't it? And sometimes we talk about unconditional love, but I think we have to really examine, what is that? Unconditional love is when you love, and there's no aversion that affects your love. It's there, and it doesn't stop, and it doesn't lessen. You know, the other thing Amma has always taught me is that we can sacrifice our comforts and our preferences to bring more love and kindness into the world. You know, I think about that definition of equanimity. I think it's overcoming conditioning so that one can retain peace in any circumstance. We were talking about equanimity yesterday. Overcoming conditioning so one can retain peace in any circumstance. Amma used to give a darshan to a leper. His name was Datan, and this was before I ever went to India. But she would ask him to wait till the very end because he had sores and they didn't want to spread it. But when she would finally see him, she would ask for water and a cloth, and she would clean his sores, and she would embrace him and hug him. And I think, you know, she was so free of aversion and so steeped in the self that is love, that she was taking care of her beloved self or her beloved God, you know, that just like Mother Teresa was seeing Christ, right? So we can cultivate this freedom from conditioning when we spend more and more time going beyond the mind, doing the spiritual practice like we did all day yesterday. That's when we are resting in the absolute reality versus the relative reality. Have you ever heard the scripture, the third Zen patriarch? Oh my gosh. It's funny, this is one of my favorite scriptures. It's so non-dual that you almost need to meditate and then read it. But it's funny, Michael Singer, my first teacher, this is his favorite scripture. We were on a walk one day, and we just got to talking about this scripture, and I couldn't believe this was his favorite scripture too. It goes, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things." Yeah. You know, somebody might say, but what about discernment? I mean, we need discernment, and that is a whole different, that's a whole different thing. I'm going to give a talk on that, discernment versus judgment. But that is really deep and profound, and you kind of need an expanded state of consciousness to understand it, but it's pointing to the fact that we can live in a way attuned to the self with a capital S, beyond the thinking mind and its preferences. And in that we are free, in that we are so free. In that we're free from circumstances. You know how we all go around and we try to get the circumstances just so we're comfortable, so we can be happy? With this state of mind, it can be whatever it is. So that's really, I think, the point. It can be whatever it is, and we're at peace. Wouldn't you like to live like that? Anybody? Yeah, it's possible. And I know you're working on it. We're all working on it. So I rarely share this story about Alma and the cowshed. I shared it once a while ago, and everybody frowned so much. I thought, I'm never sharing that story again. You all are far more enlightened. So I think I was able to really get the point across that, it is possible that we can overcome anything we feel aversive to, any hardship. We sang I Am That I Am this morning, and we were talking yesterday about good mantras. And I think resting in I Am, or I Am That I Am, is a really, really good mantra. Or it can be shorter, I am that, or it could be shorter, I am. But Nisargadatta, another really profound Indian sage, he wrote a book, I Am That, highly recommend it. But this is how he puts it. He says, hold on to the I am, to the exclusion of everything else. The I am in movement creates the world. The I am at peace becomes the absolute. The I am in movement creates the world. The I am at peace becomes the absolute. Can you feel that? Yeah, because when you're in a deep meditation and there's no thoughts and you're in that bliss, finally a thought comes. It might be, I am hungry, right? And then you're in movement, right? That's all it takes is one thought and you're in movement. I am hungry, and you're back in form. You're back in movement. You're back in the world. And then when we're still, be still and know I am. When we're still, we become the absolute. We rest in that. So, Jesus, when he proclaimed himself to be the Alpha and Omega, he was saying the I am is what I am. The I am always existed and always will exist. It has no beginning, it has no middle, it has no end. It always is. It is eternal being. So that is the absolute reality, and that is the true self of ourself. So in closing, we can practice. We can practice in our own spiritual practice. We can practice as a Sangha like we did yesterday, moving from relative reality into the stillness, where we rest for a time beyond the thinking mind. I was saying yesterday, the dis-ease of our world right now, of our humanity, is too much information, TMI. It is too much thinking without ever being still. Because if all you ever do is think and you're never resting in the stillness, you only experience a horizontal dimension. It's only form, and you never feel this vaster self. We need that. There's something in us that's restless, that's searching for knowing that vaster self and resting in it. And it's the thing that makes us scroll like crazy, but you're never going to find it on Facebook. You have to turn it off and put it away and be still, either at your altar or out there in nature somewhere by a creek, by a lake. So every moment of this peace that we cultivate, this moment of bliss or freedom, allows us to bring that light of consciousness. What did we say yesterday? We called it from sky to earth, that light of consciousness and love into the world, and bless and bless and bless. And this is how we grow the light we are, and we grow the light of the world. So would you affirm in closing with me. I am creating beauty and love wherever I go. I let the light I am shine. I let the joy I am flow. Love is in my heart today. And all is well. And so it is. I just want you all, I want you all to know I love you. I love this community. I love what we're doing. And we are the light of the world. Let us shine bright. Thank you all.